I'd now like to introduce Kate Hodgson. In high school, Kate was a leader in Kids for Climate Action. Now she's at UBC, where she's been a leader encouraging UBC to divest investments in fossil fuels, like Stanford and other universities. Kate Hodgson.
Wow, I have some very tough presentations to follow. Thank you, Sept, for your wonderful and very hopeful insights, and thank you, Holly, for your wonderful music. I saw Audrey decked out, but she is such a powerful woman in her presence and in her words. I'm so grateful that she was able to be here and speak to you. So I just wanted to start by introducing myself. My name is Kate Hodgson. I am a young person. I'm a student at UBC studying international relations and First Nations and Indigenous studies. I am a member of St. Helens Anglican Church. I'm a canoe tripper and a lover of the outdoors. I'm a Vancouverite, and I've lived in the same house on Musqueam territory right here at UBC since the very day I was born. And I have also been doing this work for quite some time. So in high school, I was the director of Kids for Climate Action, which is a political advocacy group that does a lot of really wonderful work. And now I'm an executive with UBC C350, which is a group at UBC that also fights for political action on climate change. So last year, among others, we ran a federal election campaign to get out the climate vote. And we also ran a campaign to bring student voices to COP21, the climate convergence in Paris. So that being said, my identity as an activist is not, I think, what gives me the privilege to be standing here talking to you today. Any of us who have grown up in or have been adopted by this beautiful place where we live, and any of us who are young or who have young people in our lives who we love and care for, I think have the credentials necessary to stand up and speak out against the Kinder Morgan pipeline and to have our voices heard, not just heard, but truly listened to by those with decision-making power. So everyone in this room is here because of one moment or lesson in our lives when we realized that complacency in the face of injustice just wasn't an option. And for me, my moment came in grade 9 when I took an environmental studies class at Kitsilano High School. I think there are actually 3 teachers from Kitsilano in this room, so props to you guys are great. And I just remember being confronted with this huge and unyielding problem of climate change. And I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't feel equipped to deal with it at all, and so I did the only thing that I'd been taught to do. I recycled and I rode my bike, and I felt extraordinarily guilty whenever I did anything that wasn't perfectly sustainable. And I took all the anger that I felt about the injustice of climate change and I turned it inward onto myself. And I stayed in that place for a long time, and it wasn't a healthy place to be. And then at the end of that year, I happened across a protest against the Enbridge pipeline, which had incidentally been organized by Kids for Climate Action and UBC C350, which are the 2 groups that I worked with later on. And I just remember walking down the sidewalk with a sign in my hand and 100 people all around me, and feeling for the first time like I had power and that I was part of a movement that was bigger than myself. And that was so hugely empowering. Because when people come together in a spirit of love and urgency, because they want to protect their coastline from oil spills, and because they want to protect their children from a future defined by climate disaster, that, I truly believe, there's nothing more powerful than that. And that's why I'm here today, and I think that that's why you are too. And I'm so excited to be here, especially because it feels almost like a coming full circle, because the first time I ever spoke in public was when I was in grade 11 at a town hall with the city of Vancouver, in which they were deciding to become an intervener in the Kinder Morgan NEB hearings. And I remember, I know I was preaching to the choir, but I was shaking so much and I was so nervous. The year after that, I stood on Burnaby Mountain and sang our national anthem as 2 of my very dear friends, who were 14 at the time, crossed the injunction line and risked arrest to stand up for their homes. In 2014, I held an NEB party at my house, and a whole bunch of friends came over and ate pizza, and we applied to be commenters and interveners in the Kinder Morgan NEB hearings. And last year, I was an organizer with Break Free, which was a powerful direct action against the Trans Mountain Pipeline made up of students and elders and faith groups and First Nations and environmentalists and everyday citizens citizens. This fight has been long, and it has been hard, and it can sometimes feel like Kinder Morgan does have the upper hand. But the thing that has kept me going through all of it has been these powerful and beautiful comings together of people, young and old, who are all tied together by love for this place where we live, and that, I think, is exactly what is happening here tonight. So, I was listening to the CBC a couple weeks ago, and I heard an interview with Ian Anderson, who is the CEO of Kinder Morgan Canada, in which he said that the opposition gets a louder voice at the mic, referring to the public commenting around the Kinder Morgan pipeline. And he argued that the public consultation process for Kinder Morgan did not actually accurately reflect the attitudes of British Columbians toward the project, which I actually think is just hilarious, because public consultation, like democracy, is the property of those who show up. Like only 68% of Canadians cast ballots in the last federal election, and no party would have ever tried to claim that all the other eligible voters would have probably voted for us, so we should be in power. Our voices at the mic are strongest and may seem the loudest because our stakes in this struggle are so much higher. If Trans Mountain is defeated, as Sept was saying, its proponents will lose a little money and a few jobs here and there. But if this pipeline is approved, we will all stand to lose the livability of this planet and of this coastline, which is so intertwined with who we are as a people. This project will put at risk the inlet that I have grown up beside. I swim in that water, I bike along that seashore, and it is a place that I care for a great deal. Trans Mountain will also threaten the countless waterways, cities, towns, First Nations communities that lie between the Alberta tar sands and here. And perhaps most importantly, it will put another significant crack in the Trudeau government's chances of delivering on its big, big promises to curb Canada's climate impact. And that, to me, is completely unacceptable. So, last October, I voted for the first time. And I went with my very good friend and my brother, and all three of us were just completely overwhelmed with excitement because we had been watching our parents vote since we were very little, and we had been campaigning for others to vote for climate all throughout high school. And when I cast my ballot for that first time, I remember feeling so powerful because I was finally able to have a say in the kind of future I wanted for my country. And I did vote Liberal because, as so many other young people did this past election, I felt comfortable with Trudeau's promises when it came to climate action. During the election campaign, Trudeau made an explicit promise to overhaul the review process for pipeline projects, including projects that were currently under review, including the Kinder Morgan pipeline. And that is a promise they have chosen to break, as evidenced by the fact that the project was approved this summer without a reviewed process. And now this is where the ironies start to come in, because in December last year, the Trudeau government launched themselves back onto the world stage at the COP21 climate conference in Paris, where they made some other very big and very bold promises. I'm sure you all remember the headline that proclaimed Canada's back, and the congratulations that the Liberals received for joining the Ambition Coalition of nations that were shooting for keeping warming under 1.5 degrees Celsius rather than the generally agreed upon cap of 2 degrees Celsius. And that was a big moment for us at UBC C350. We sent hundreds of student messages to Catherine McKenna detailing what we wanted our sustainable future to look like, and we held rallies and made videos and did our best to show our government that we would hold them to their commitments. So what is implied by the commitments that the Trudeau government made in Paris? For Canada to remain in keeping with those commitments, and Seth touched on this as well, we will only be able to extract and burn a fraction of the coal, the oil, and the gas that is already in production. A fraction of what is already in production. And what that means is that we actually can't allow any new fracking, any new drilling, any more digging, and certainly no more pipelines. So our government is now faced with a choice: to meet their international commitments, or to pump away my generation's future through 245 kilometers of pipe. So throughout their election campaign and later in Paris, we heard from the Liberals over and over that they were planning on doing the former. And so I have to say that in light of the federal government's decision yesterday to to approve Patronus. I'm feeling pretty damned betrayed, and I think that you are as well. The approval of this project speaks unfortunate volumes about the ambition of our government's climate coalition, and it seems as if Trudeau's government is not entirely clear on what the promises they made in Paris will actually require of them. And that saddens and scares me quite a lot. This is not the leadership I voted for. This is not the leadership that all of you voted for. And Trudeau's government may want to let themselves off the hook when it comes to climate, but I know that all of us in this room are not prepared to let them get off quite as easily as that. So besides being the Prime Minister, I think it's also really important to note that Trudeau is the Minister of Youth. And if he wants to stand in the best interests of the young people of this country, he can start by getting serious about climate change, because it is my generation that will have to live with the consequences of our government's current inaction. We as young people do not want an economy for our future that is based on the resources of the 18th century. We do not want to be saddled with an obsolete energy infrastructure, and we certainly do not want to inherit a world balanced on or over the brink of climate disaster. And we've been hearing young people all across the country repeat that message again and again. For those of you who don't know, on October 24th, there's going to be a massive demonstration of civil disobedience by young people on Parliament Hill in opposition to the Kinder Morgan pipeline and other energy infrastructure. All across the country, high school and university students are demanding that our government do its part to defend our future. You know, there are elementary school students that are starting letter-writing campaigns. There are high school students that spend their afternoons petitioning on street corners. I think it's really important, though, to acknowledge that courage looks different in all of us. Some of us will stand in front of police officers and risk arrest when we have to. I think lots of people in this room have done that at Burnaby Mountain. Some of us will write letters and sign petitions. Some of us will sit down with our MLAs and our MPs to talk about why we don't want this project to be a part of Metro Vancouver's future. All of us will write a letter to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau by September 30th. In December, Trudeau's government will make a decision on the Kinder Morgan pipeline. And if Lulu Island is anything of an indication, I think it's likely they'll be breaking a few more of their promises. So to finish up, I would like to say this. It's a mighty good thing our Prime Minister has said governments grant permits, but communities grant permission. Because although our government is intent on breaking their promises, I have this vague feeling that we're not going to let them. So in the 2 months leading up to that final decision, I give you all this charge. Meet with your politicians, especially if you are in one of the ridings of the 5 Liberal MPs in Vancouver and Burnaby. Write those letters. Make your voices heard in any ways that you can. Because I truly do believe that when good and caring people come together to protect their land, their air, and their water, they will always win.
I worry that the leadership approach of assuring the public that politicians understand climate change and are committed to First Nations reconciliation is a conscious effort to put the masses to sleep while they make policy decisions that actually destroy agriculture, like Site C, forestry, and First Nations rights, like the LNG pipeline, and public safety, like the Kinder Morgan expansion. Is there anything CCPA can do to expose this duplicitous approach by our leaders on these issues?
So just in regards to that last question about the leadership approach of assuring the public that politicians understand climate change and that they're committed to First Nations rights as a kind of facade, I think that the Trudeau government has been trying their darn hardest to do that, and I think that people have been seeing through it. So our governments can try, but I think that as long as we have concerned and intelligent citizens who are keeping them accountable, then that is a problem that we can learn to manage. On the other hand, if our governments really are taking meaningful steps toward reconciliation, implementing UNDRIP, stopping pipelines, halting tar sands expansion, then